which may come as a surprise, but the Suzuki Jimny is still being made. It's barely changed since 1998. In fact, it's changed about as much as Simon Cowell's dress sense has. But in a world which hasn't got the Land Rover Defender, could this well be for smart money? Let's find out. So as mentioned, the styling of the Jimny hasn't changed too much throughout the years, but even so, I still kind of quite like it. It's got a certain charm to it, it's quite quirky, it's quite cute. I also like this two-tone look as well, it looks quite good. You also get 15-inch alloy wheels, and you also get roof rails, but let's face it, any proper SUV should come with roof rails. So this is actually the Suzuki Jimny Adventure Edition. It's limited edition, it's brought out last year and only 200 were made. So that means you get the quite nice white and grey colour combo, and you also get this touchscreen, which is okay, it gets your job done, but I must admit it looks like it's been a bit of an afterthought, and it does look a little bit aftermarket as well. So it's based on the SZ4 trim. That means you get air conditioning, electric windows, and that's about it in all honesty. There's not a great deal of equipment. You get Bluetooth as well, and you get DAB radio, but yes, there's not a great deal of kit. There is also an SZ3 model that starts at £14,249, but in all honesty it's not worth getting because you really don't get a lot for your money. So this model is no longer available because it's limited edition, but I would say if you're going to get a Jimny, get for SZ4. That's a little bit under £15,000, but you do get more for your money as mentioned. So in regards to getting a good driving position, I must confess it's pretty tricky. The steering wheel doesn't move at all. The chair is adjustable but only one way. I can either recline it back or bring it forward. The pedals are tad offset. So yeah, it's not the greatest driving position if I'm honest. So the Jimny is 3-door only, and getting in and out back isn't the easiest. To slide that forward, the chair doesn't slide forward, I've got to do that as well. I've got to be a little bit delicate getting in. And then annoyingly, when I bring the chair back, it doesn't go back to my driving position. But room in the back is pretty good. There's plenty of headroom here, although once the seat is back, I'm not going to have a great deal of leg room here. So space in the back is cramped, and in all honesty space in the front isn't particularly fantastic either. I'm afraid getting out isn't much easier either. Step forward, and it's quite a small gap to get through. It's not particularly dignified. Also part of the limited edition package is this hard wheel cover. This means Adventure, by the way. I just hope Suzuki had that verified. It might be one of those tattoos you get, which is meant to say something spiritual, but it turns out to be Coca-Cola or something. But if you open the door, which isn't going to be the most practical for tight parking spaces, so you can't reverse it up against a wall or anything like that, you will find a boot which is very small to say the least. It's 113 litres, so you're not going to be able to fit a great deal in there. You can fold down the 2 rear seats, but that won't give you a flat loading bay, and even that isn't still a massive amount of room, but it should be enough to get a weekly shopping. So in the Suzuki Jimny there's a choice of only one engine. It's a 1.3 litre petrol, which is naturally aspirated, and it offers, wait for it, 84 horsepower. Whoa, steady on. That means that 0 to 62 miles per hour will come eventually, and the top speed is just 87 miles per hour. But in all honesty, you won't want to get it to 87 miles per hour purely because you'll be deafened by the engine note. At low revs, yeah, it's not too bad, but when you get the engine high revving, it's quite boomy, it's quite noisy, and after a while it's likely to give you a headache, and it has given me a headache on the motorway. Now, speaking of the motorway, this is a place where the Jimny really isn't at home. The car's very light, in fact it's not that much heavier than a Mazda MX-5, but because of its boxy nature, on the motorway, at 70 miles per hour, not only is it noisy, but if you get a strong wind, it can be eventful, let's put it that way. I drove it on the QE2 bridge yesterday, and by the time I got to the other end, my underpants were quite brown, if I'm honest. So the Jimny and crosswinds, they don't go together very well. The 1.3 litre engine is mated to a 5-speed manual gearbox, which is alright, although it looks like it's come out of a full transit. The throws are shorter than I was expecting, although it's not the most precise. Sometimes you think you've got it in one gear, only to find that you haven't. So you've either got no power, or you've got lots of high revs, which is of course not very good for the ears. There is also an automatic option available as well, and that will cost you £900 extra. Although from what I've heard, there isn't a particularly good gearbox either. These leather seats aren't too bad, they're comfortable enough, although I found on longer journeys they don't offer the back support you'll need, so this really isn't a suitable car for long journeys, especially as it's not very comfortable on the motorway whatsoever. In regards to the ride, it's bouncy. It's most of the time it's unsettled. At the moment I'm doing 40 miles per hour and it's quite jiggly. It's not very settled, and steering is quite vague in all honesty. I'm sort of turning the wheel, but I can't really feel where the car's going. Now, as you can imagine, a car like this isn't going to be particularly good at handling, and you'd be right. Because of its boxy nature and its kind of slab-sided profile, you will find this will lean quite badly in the corners, and it will go round them, but just not very well. So this definitely isn't a car made for handling, that's for certain. So the inside of a Jimny is, how can I put it kindly, nostalgic. Like I mentioned earlier, the car's been made since 1998, and it looks as if this car is still in 1998. Yeah, you've got a few pieces of silver trim there to tart it up. These leather seats aren't too bad, but it is quite low rent, and these knobs aren't exactly premium. It is a cheap car, but even so, the cabin does feel somewhat, somewhat low rent. So at this point you may be thinking, well, there aren't many plus points for the Jimny, but because of its small compact size, it does mean that it's very easy to manoeuvre and it's very easy to park as well. The visibility is also quite good due to the large windows, but where it really shines is off-road. It's got a low range gearbox, which is exactly what you need for this kind of thing, and even though it was on road tyres, the Jimny did a very, very good job off-road, and it only really got stuck once, but that's because the ruts were quite deep and it was quite muddy. But even so, I have to commend the Jimny for its off-road ability. However though, that's not quite enough to save it from its other shortcomings, especially when you consider cars such as the Dexter, which is cheaper, it's bigger, so it offers more room, and it's got a bigger boot, it's more comfortable, plus you can get a diesel engine for better economy. Actually, speaking of fuel economy, so in regards to fuel economy, it's not fantastic, I'm afraid. Although it's only a 1.3 litre engine and the car is extremely light for what it is, it's 1,090 kilograms, which, as I said, is not that much more than a Mazda MX-5. It's not particularly frugal. You'd expect it to be quite frugal, but no, not so. 39.8 miles to the gallon is what's quoted by Suzuki, but I found that in real world use I've been getting around 32 miles to the gallon, and that's on combined journeys, which isn't fantastic. It also emits quite a bit of CO2. You're looking at 165 grams per kilometre of CO2 emissions, so road tax isn't going to be cheap either, so that's something to bear in mind. A lot has changed since 1998, but sadly the Jimny hasn't. Unfortunately, its fantastic off-road ability doesn't make up for its on-road shortcomings, which is a problem, especially when you have cars like the Dexter on the market. So it's difficult to really recommend the Jimny as an everyday car. The world has moved on, but sadly, Jimny hasn't.